What's up guys, my name is Ace, and by the time this video goes live, the Season 1 update for XDefiant should be here, assuming there are no issues, keeping in mind, of course, this is recorded before Season 1 actually goes live. But in today's video, I wanted to go through the patch notes and talk about all of the changes that we can expect to see with today's update. So we got some quality of life changes, some abilities balancing that many people have been asking for since the beginning of the game, a little bit of weapon tuning as well, although not a whole lot. And then I also want to briefly touch on the new content that we're expecting, like the new faction as well as the new weapons. But just keep in mind, with today's video, I'm not going to be diving super deep into the details of those, simply because I feel they deserve a lot more attention, and I'd like to actually dive in and do a bunch of detailed testing with those new elements so I can make dedicated videos for them. But without further ado, let's dive right into this, and one great quality of life change that came with this update is your double XP boosters will now only count down in gameplay time. They're not going to be counting down when you're in the menus, so this is like how old school Call of Duty used to work with their double XP, and I'm really happy to see this change. This is a very player-oriented change that not many games do anymore these days. And I think that's great that they're looking out for the players there. Next up, when it comes to XP, they've lowered the XP threshold for each Battle Pass tier for Season 1, so you should be able to get through those tiers noticeably faster than we could in the preseason. They've also tuned our match bonus XP rewards. So unfortunately for MVP and for just getting a victory in the game, before Season 1, you would get 2,000 XP for each of those. Now we're only getting 1,000 XP for each of those. And then also, if you get a draw, you used to get 1,000 XP, but now you're only getting 500 XP with Season 1. However, on the upside, there was actually a net improvement here if you stick it out to the end of matches, because our completion bonus went from 2,000 XP up to 4,000 XP. So just sticking in the game right to the end will give you a guaranteed 4,000 XP, win or lose. And therefore, even if you are the MVP in the game, you are going to be getting more total XP after the Season 1 update than you did before the Season 1 update as the MVP. And I think this is great. This should at least help discourage people from leaving the game. Although one fear I have with this is, at least in the game's current state, there's no AFK kick timer. And therefore, if you get your character in a match, you can just set your controller down and your character will stand there for the entire game, and they'll never get kicked, so you're taking up a valuable team slot and not contributing anything to help your team out. And now after this Season 1 update, you're going to get a total of 4,000 XP for doing literally nothing. So kicking people that are AFK is something I really hope they're able to implement soon, because I could see this potentially getting out of hand, especially with this increased bonus. In either case, the next thing they've added is a headshot icon to the kill feed, so that's excellent to see. Another thing on top of this that I just wanted to point out is I would also still like to see an icon in the kill feed if you get shot through some form of cover for that last bullet that killed you, just to help explain certain situations where you're not sure if you died around a corner or through some cover. But the headshot indicator is a nice step in the right direction. Next, let's talk about the new faction a little bit. This is GSK, and with this, one of their abilities is the electrified barbed wire that you can throw down for area denial. Whereas their other ability is the active defense system, which is like a trophy system from Call of Duty. So you throw this device down and it will block any incoming equipment for a duration of time. Next, for their Ultra, it's essentially a riot shield that has a flash charge on it as well. So you can use it to block bullets and flash enemy players. And then finally, their passive trait is they don't have a headshot multiplier. You deal the same amount of damage to the head as the body, and with sniper rifles, it appears they take the lowest damage value for their headshot. So you don't get the upper torso damage with a sniper rifle when you get shot in the head, you're getting like the foot damage when shot in the head. Which I'm not too sure how I feel about that. I'm curious to see how this plays out. But that does seem a little bit backwards, that you're able to get a one-shot kill to the upper torso with a sniper rifle, but you won't get a one-shot kill to the head against GSK players with that same sniper rifle. But I'm willing to at least give this a shot and see how it ends up playing out over time. Perhaps my opinion will change on that. Then continuing on with the faction section, let's talk about some of the ability balancing that we got with the Season 1 update, and some great things are in here. The first thing is with Echelon's Intel suit, they just increased the cooldown from 30 seconds up to 40 seconds. So that should at least reduce the spamminess of this a little. Although I'm not sure if this is going to be quite enough to resolve a lot of the issues and complaints that the community has with this. At the very least, this should make it a little bit less oppressive in game. Then for Phantom's Mag Barrier, this is that shield wall that they can shoot up. They also increase the cooldown from 30 seconds up to 40 seconds for this. So you're going to see those less often. And on top of this, they reduced the health of that shield from 500 down to 400. So it's actually going to be a bit easier to destroy those shields as well. After that one, for the Phantom's ultimate ability, it will now take damage from EMP grenades, although it's going to take 6 EMP grenades to completely take one out, which is pretty crazy. And realistically, it seems EMPs aren't really a solid counter to that. Then with DedSec's hijacked ability, they decrease the cooldown on this from 28 seconds down to 20 seconds. plus the remaining duration of whatever equipment you have hacked in that moment. The cooldown will start the moment that hacked equipment is expired. But I really like to see that, not only because it should discourage people from using Spider-Bot a little bit more, especially when we look at the nerfs to the Spider-Bot in just a second, but on top of that, I just feel like this ability isn't the most powerful out there because it's the type of thing that can only be used in the right situations when you happen to come across something that can be hacked. And as a result, I think it's totally fair that it has a faster cooldown period compared to many of the other abilities in the game that you have much more control over. After that though, let's talk about the Spider Bot. They made some adjustments to this. The first thing is they increased the cooldown from 25 seconds all the way up to 40 seconds. So that's going to be a lot less spammable than before Season 4. And if you have somebody using a spider bot in the game, you're not going to see those spider bots nearly as often as pre-patch. But then on top of this, they adjusted the spider bot behavior so multiple spider bots won't attempt to hug the same face. That's something I saw a few times where one person would have a spider bot attached to their face and there'd be another one standing at their feet just waiting to jump on them immediately after, which is kind of funny, but also obviously a very frustrating experience that I don't think should be taking place and shouldn't be now after this update. But on top of that, they also say spider bots will no longer continue to ignore faces that they've hugged multiple recent times. So in a way, that's a slight buff to that as well. So it's a little bit of give and take, as they say in the patch notes. In general, at least, I'm mainly just glad to see that the cooldown period has increased pretty drastically on that, while also seeing a buff to Hijack. So hopefully more DedSec players will lean in the direction of Hijack over that spider bot. But moving on to the next ability change here, this is to Libertad's Biovita boost. They reduced the cooldown on that from 35 seconds down to 20 seconds. The patch notes say it went from 25 seconds down to 20, but I just checked for myself and it was 35 seconds before this update. So that is a pretty big buff to the cooldown, and it's nice to see since that ability has been quite weak since launch. And then finally, for faction adjustments, with Libertad's ultimate, it will no longer disappear after you deploy it if you respawn with a different faction immediately after dying. And there we go, that wraps it up for all of the ability tuning that took place with this update. And I would say definitely some solid changes here. I think we're going to see some improvements to some areas where people had complaints. But of course, time will tell when it comes to this. We do need to get some playtime to see how this plays out after these updates. Next, there's a new map they added to the game. This is Clubhouse, which you guys might recognize from Rainbow Six Siege. For game modes, they've added Capture the Flag, which I'm really excited to hop into. I think CTF's going to play super well for this game. And now let's get into the weapons section here. The first thing they did is they improved the hit flinch penalty when using sniper rifles. So a few weeks ago, we had that update where they drastically increased the amount of flinch you experience when you're sniping. However, apparently that wasn't enough according to their data. So another thing they've done here is the speed of that flinch is increased by 25%. So you're going to be flinching up faster. They've also made it so your camera will now always kick upward rather than sometimes upward and sometimes downward. And they mentioned it was at random. Whereas a little bit of testing that I did in game, which is difficult because it's not a controlled environment, I thought you would flinch downward if you get shot in the head and upward if you got shot in the body. But apparently that wasn't the case. That was just random. And this is just another reason that I would really like to see some actual custom game ability so I can do proper testing rather than doing my best to make assumptions based on just analyzing gameplay from real matches. But in either case, now your flinch will always kick upward with sniper rifles. And then on top of this, they increase the amount your flinch will kick either left or right by 3 times. So there should be a lot more horizontal deviation as well, not just upward deviation. Now, unfortunately, for weapon balancing adjustments, that's the only thing we saw with this update. Not that the weapon balancing is in a terrible state, in my opinion. I think most of the guns are perfectly viable to use, with just some exceptions in there that I think could use a little bit of work. But then on top of this, we got a new sniper rifle with this update, the L115, which they describe as a middle ground between the TAC-50 and the M44. We also have the LVOAC, which is similar to the M4A1, but a much faster fire rate and more recoil and less range. And then finally, for new weapons with the Season 1 update, we got the sawed-off shotgun, and that's a secondary weapon. So instead of a pistol, you can have a short sawed-off shotgun that doesn't have the same range as the double barrel. And also, they mentioned that it doesn't have nearly the same movement speed as the pistols in the game. So that is going to be another downside to having this in your inventory, is you're not going to get that crazy good speed boost for your opening routes, for instance, or routes off of a respawn. So there are some trade-offs there, although I gotta say, I'm a little concerned about this just based on some of the gameplay clips I saw. It seemed pretty effective, and the secondaries in this game are generally not that powerful. This one might be. And now that we have that out of the way, they've actually added new mastery skins as well for our weapons. So at rank 300 for a weapon, you're going to get Titanium Violet. At rank 350, you'll get Titanium Azure. And at weapon rank 400, you get Titanium Prisma. And these are really nice looking camos. So for those really heavy grinders out there, they can grind toward these. And then finally in the weapon section, they just mentioned they fixed weapons and optics shake in first person view while using aiming down sight. Next in the patch notes for our devices, they have a new and improved visual effect for the flash grenade that's described as being less intense than the previous one, so I don't think it's going to make your screen go completely white and totally blind you, although you could always turn the setting on to make it so it turns black. And then they also fixed an exploit where players could respawn with multiple devices by using the copy loadout feature. As for the social tab here, they've added a creator code program, which I have submitted for. I'll keep you guys updated if I happen to get a creator code for this. And essentially that just allows you to support a creator. If you're buying anything in game, that creator will get a cut without increasing the cost to you. They also disabled the ability to create a party with enemy players because somehow you were able to do that in game. And that sounds a little sketchy because it seems like you could do some boosting that way. So you shouldn't be able to do that now. And they've disabled whispers in the text chat. As for audio, they didn't really give us any specifics here. They just mentioned they tweaked the mix of in-game voices and sound effects for volume and clarity. And then finally, for the miscellaneous section here, our closed beta reward, the Kersey's Dungaree skin. Apparently that wasn't unlocking for people, and now it should be unlocked. They also fixed some challenge tracking with Ubisoft Connect. There were some graphical and audio fixes, various. They didn't specify exactly what changed there, and then just additional crash fixes. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for all of the changes that took place with the Season 1 updates. And overall, definitely some solid changes in there. I'm really looking forward to hopping in and playing, trying some of the new content. I'm looking forward to seeing that ability balancing, so hopefully the meta there will shift a little bit, and the more frustrating abilities won't be quite as constant. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Based on what you guys have seen so far with Season 1, how are you feeling about everything? How are you guys feeling about the changes that they made to the abilities? What are your thoughts on the new faction, the GSK faction, and the fact that not even snipers will get a one-shot headshot against them? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.